Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
The wife decided to break the rules set by them, but for what? Today's story with a similar plot. Enjoy watching it. My name is Spencer Christian. I'm 48 years old, and I'm a civil engineer. I organize and control the construction of large projects. My area of responsibility is the North Central region, which includes Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana. One such project was a new 40-story tower on the shores of Lake Erie. I completed the project on time and within budget. I was just about to enter the boardroom at our headquarters in downtown Cleveland to meet with my boss and some of the board members. I thought I was in for a nice bonus. My wife Ellen and I live in the Cleveland suburbs and have been married for 23 years. During this time, we raised two wonderful children, Mary and Martin. Both are now in college. Mary left last September, and we are alone for the first time in 21 years. Ellen was a homemaker and did a wonderful job raising our children and creating a comfortable home for us all. I loved her madly and always have, but now things are not going smoothly between us. Over the past year, Ellen had become grumpy and sarcastic, which was exacerbated by the fact that I had several other projects that required a lot of time. I knew that, but I also knew there was the possibility of something special if I stuck it out for another year or two. If everything worked out, Ellen and I would be fine. That was on my mind as I walked into the boardroom to collect my bonus. John Wilson, the president of our company, was already waiting and introduced me to two other board members whose names I don't remember now. I assumed he was at a meeting and had invited two members to meet me and watch as I was praised for a job well done and presented with a check. I was a little surprised by the absence of my boss, Hugh Preston, but I took the offered seat and waited for congratulations and the expected bonus. Instead, I was in for a shock. "Spencer, my boy, congratulations on a job well done. You delivered when everyone expected you to be late and over budget, but you did the opposite. Great job. As a reward for all your efforts, we want to make you an offer. We want you to take over in Atlanta. Did you know that Mark Todd is retiring in 3 months? He has several new projects that he doesn't want to complete. He wants to leave now, and we want you to take his place as managing director of Southern Operations. This is a big promotion and will mean more money and privileges for you and Ellen, as well as placing you directly below me and no one else. What do you say?" I was speechless. This would be a big step for me and would put me in charge of the largest operation in the company. It was just one step from the top position. Hell, it was a precursor to John Wilson's position. How could I refuse? I finally came to my senses and told John and the others that I would accept the offer and do the job for them, and everything that is usually said in such situations. I was a little distracted, but I still remembered to tell John that I wanted to discuss this with Ellen before he announced anything. He agreed with a big laugh and said he would give me a month to iron out the details before making the announcement. We talked some more, and I was finally able to leave. I told my secretary I was taking the rest of the day off and went home to tell Ellen the news. As I drove up to our house, I thought about how to tell Ellen about this. I knew she would love the idea of moving to Atlanta because she didn't really like the winters in Cleveland. She often talked about moving somewhere warmer after I retired. I entered the house and, as usual, found her in the kitchen. Ellen was a wonderful cook and loved trying new recipes. I smelled a wonderful aroma. "Oh, are you home early? Have you spoken to Mr. Wilson about your bonus? What was he like? How much did they cheat you out of again after you saved them a lot of money? Did they give you a nice check to make you happy? Did you pretend it was a big deal?" I should have expected this, grumpy as usual. When I left this morning, we had just finished a big fight about money. It's not that we had money problems, but Ellen felt that I was never paid enough for the amount of time and effort I put in. She may have been right, but I loved what I did and made good money. Of course, I hoped for the best, and here it is, but for some reason, her tantrum only made me angrier. I decided not to tell her about the promotion right now. Let her dig a hole for herself, and then we'll see how she gets out of it when I tell her the good news. But not now. He didn't mention the bonus. I just met with John and some of the board members. They congratulated me, but we didn't talk about the bonus. Maybe they'll look into it later. Ellen exploded, and within 20 minutes, I had had enough. I was still silent about the promotion, but I let my anger out. I interrupted one of her tirades to reply, "It's not as bad as you think. I know he has other options for me. I do my job perfectly, and they know it. I could ask for something else, perhaps moving to another part of the country. We have a choice, and I think we should discuss it." "Which choice?" "You're just trying to avoid the truth. They take advantage of you, and you let them. You don't have the courage. I'm sick of the way you let them humiliate you." She was really angry and was now venting her frustrations. Her next words came as a complete surprise to me. "I think we need to break up. We need time apart, otherwise, I'm afraid we won't survive as a couple. Our marriage is in trouble, and I don't see a way to improve it. You don't care that we're not going anywhere, and I want better. Everything must change." If she expected me to fight for this marriage, then this would not have happened. I was so angry with her at that moment, and I realized that this was becoming almost the norm for us. I just stopped talking and started thinking about it. Okay, I'll give her what she wants and let her see how it feels. I need time to prepare for my move to Atlanta. Let it simmer a little on its own. I'll enjoy the time away from the evil vixen she's become. I think this might be a good idea. Now we do nothing but fight, and there is no reason for it. Nothing I do makes you happy, and all you do is complain about me. So, okay, let's do this. Okay, smart guy. What do we need to do to have a real breakup? Should I go to court or just go away for a while? We can just go our separate ways. I will live at the club, and you will stay here. Company membership will pay for most of it. We need to set some rules, but other than that, we'll just live separately for a month or so. I don't think we need to go to court unless you want to think about divorce. Is this what it's all about, Spencer? Of course not. I never wanted a divorce. I still love you and want to be your husband, but it's difficult now. I don't think it's all my fault, but I don't know what to do to fix it. Maybe some time apart will give us both time to think. Fine. I'll call the club right now and find out when I can get a room. As soon as I have a room, I will move out, and we will set a deadline of 1 month. After that, we'll talk and decide what to do next. How do you like it? Sounds good. It will take a month to get used to being alone. This may be difficult for me since I have never been alone since we got married. It was always the kids or you and me, rarely alone for both of us. I can't even imagine how it will be. Well, you will have time to learn. But with your church responsibilities, your club chairmanship, and your activities at the sports center, I don't think you'll ever be alone. But I won't be there, and apparently, that's what you want. I don't want to be without you, never. Trust me, I really love you and would never want to lose you, but things are bad between us right now. We have to do this to try to get back to what we had. I believe in it. You can believe in whatever you want, but one thing is clear to me, you have a problem being with me. I don't think you want to be alone, you just want me gone. But it's your decision, and I won't fight you. As usual, you put words in my mouth and try to start a fight. That's all we do, fight. I think you want this as much as I do. I had a bad feeling. It all seemed wrong. Even though I agreed, it sounded good at the time because I was angry and wanted her out of sight. But now that it was becoming a reality, I began to doubt that it would ever be different. Since I agreed, I called the club and asked about the room. They had a room available in 3 days, and I booked it for a month from then on. They reserved it on my credit card, so it was all set. I went back to the kitchen to tell Ellen. She seemed to be already beginning to rejoice at this idea, which did not add to my optimism. Despite her assurances of love, I told her I would start packing this evening to get everything in order. I was used to having my clothes dry cleaned because Ellen hated doing laundry, and besides, I liked the dry cleaning and ironing my trousers and shirts better than Ellen could. I could do my laundry at the club either myself or with the help of one of the employees. In any case, the clothes were fine. Things were pretty quiet for the next 2 days as I packed my things and Ellen made her plans for meetings and other events around her busy schedule. She already seemed happier knowing that I would be leaving soon. The first night I moved into the guest room, and we avoided each other as best we could, each with our own thoughts. I left the final preparations for the evening before moving into the club. I told Ellen that we needed to discuss our travel rules. She agreed, and we went to the kitchen, our favorite meeting place, with coffee and cakes that I bought from the local bakery. I started with suggestions. Let me make a few suggestions, and then we will discuss them. Nothing has been decided yet, so these are just suggestions. Fine, Ellen simply nodded. Firstly, the house must be neutral territory. This means that if I need something from home, I will call, and you will make time for me to pick up what I need. I'll call first, but you have to find the time. Fine, she nodded again. Secondly, since we are just separating and not getting divorced, we are still married. This means that there will be no women in my room and no men in the house. This is non-negotiable. If we cannot agree on this, then there will be no separation, and we will return to discussing divorce or legal separation. Do you agree? Yes, I agree. I didn't even think about it, but you're right. This way, there will be no misunderstandings or temptations. I agree. Furthermore, if either of us, whether you or I, decides to meet someone else during this period, we must inform the other person beforehand. This includes having dinner, lunch, or coffee alone with someone of the opposite intim. No misunderstandings or conflicts. Fine. I have no intentions of dating anyone, so I agree. Are you going on dates since you brought up this topic? I was just wondering. No, I have no such intentions. We've been married 23 years, and it never occurred to me. But now, I'm not sure about you. She wanted to say something, but I raised my hand to prevent her from objecting. I was sure that she herself did not know what she was capable of. I think we need to add one more condition. Since this is a real separation, albeit informal, if one of us decides we want more than just meeting another person, we must inform the other person as well. This must be done very carefully. If not, the consequences could be worse than leaving. Like I said, we're still married. Again, I have no intention of doing anything like that, but I don't want to discuss it after something happens and it's too late. Let's discuss this now. Fine. Since I have no intention of doing anything like that, I agree. So, are there any other terms we need to agree to? This sounds like a major departure, not just a cooling off period. No, I think that's it. Like I said, we need this time apart, but we are still married and need to remember that living alone without marital obligations can feel completely different. It can be easy to forget that you are married. Well, not for me, but maybe for you. I think you're just setting things up so you can do what you want without me, but we'll see. I was satisfied with our discussion about leaving and felt a little better. I still had doubts and was worried about what might happen, but I decided that we needed to do this now rather than let the situation get worse. We might consider counseling if it works and we decide to work on our marriage. This time apart will give us a clearer view. I went to bed quite early that evening, as I had a long day ahead of me tomorrow. I had meetings all morning until lunch, and then I had to review the proposal and make decisions, which could keep me busy until the evening. Then I had to move my things to a new room at the club and find a way to relax. At least the next day was Saturday, and I could take the time to organize my new place. I showered and went to bed, ready to read a little before sleeping. I had just started reading when Ellen came into my room. I expected her to go about her plans as she did almost every night, but today she had other plans. She told me to put the book down and make love to her. This was a long-awaited request that hadn't been made for more than 3 months. It had been so long since she wanted to make love. I refused. She looked at me with anger. "What are you doing? Don't you want to make love to me? Do you want to get rid of me so much that you can't even make time for it? You don't want to make love. This is what you've been doing for the last year or so, just a quick fix to get things done. Do your duty, and go to sleep." Well, not for me. Thanks. With these words, I rolled out of bed and went downstairs to the office. If I had to sleep there tonight, so be it. But after a few minutes, I realized she wasn't going to make a big deal out of it, so I waited another 10 minutes and went back to the spare room. She had left, and the door to our bedroom was closed. I went in, closed my door, and went back to bed. I tried to read, but my tears were getting in the way, so I finally turned off the light and tried to sleep. I succeeded and woke up the next morning, depressed but ready. When I went down to the kitchen the next morning, there was coffee and bagels. I had a big day planned, and it was nice to start it off with this. Ellen seemed very happy, which was rare. Apparently, last night's failure made her happy knowing I was leaving today. I didn't talk about it, and we parted on pretty good terms. I wanted to get to work and start preparing for the move, so I left as soon as possible. I started my day early and was soon completely engrossed in meetings. The day passed quite quickly as I was busy almost continuously. I didn't have time to think about what was going to happen, and I didn't have time to worry about it. I worked until almost dinner, and since I didn't have to worry about getting home, I decided to work on the proposal over a nice dinner at the club's restaurant. I worked until almost 8 o'clock in the evening before asking one of the stewards to help me carry my things up to my room. We successfully moved the bags, and I was left alone with my things in the new place, which consisted of a small living room with a TV, a desk, and a sofa, a fairly large bedroom with a double bed and a built-in TV, a small desk with a reading light, and a bathroom that was quite comfortable. Overall, it wasn't bad for a single man. I spent the rest of the evening unpacking, hanging clothes, and putting the rest into drawers and closets. By 10:30, I was ready and decided to call Ellen to give her my room number and phone number. It was as per our agreement, so the call was in order. "Hi Ellen, it's me. I just finished unpacking and getting settled, and I have contact information for you. Do you have a pen?" "Okay, I will wait." "Great. Room 55560, 495, and I'm in room 3A. Not bad, actually. It's pretty cozy for a single guy. You're not a lonely guy, and I don't expect you to act like that. Well, you know what I mean. I'm here alone, so it's like I'm alone. It's not like I can talk to you anytime or see you before bed or ask you about the kids and stuff. Yes, I know it's necessary, but I don't like it. Maybe you like it, but I don't." This was where it all started, and I realized it almost immediately. I interrupted her, reminding her that we had agreed not to do this, and said that I was going to hang up. I did so and almost burst into tears, but I pulled myself together and decided to continue with this plan, a plan that seemed more and more foolish by the minute. I settled in, took a shower, and sat down to watch something entertaining. It wasn't fun, it was just a distraction. Finally, I picked up the book and fell asleep after reading no more than 5 pages. I slept like a baby until my alarm woke me up for the first full day of our separation. Over the next 2 weeks, I made most of the necessary preparations and handed over my responsibilities to Jordan Collins, who took over my old position. Jordan was a good person, and I didn't hesitate to give him the files and other things he needed. He and I spent some time with Hugh Preston, and we agreed on work priorities. We worked well together, and everything went according to plan. During this time, I called Ellen a couple of times, but I often forgot, and by the time I remembered, it was already too late. It was the 3rd week of our trial separation when I received a call from Ellen, who wanted to meet me at the club to discuss something. I, of course, agreed but began to worry about what was to come. The only reason for us to talk was to discuss the terms we had set. There were only 2 things we needed to meet and talk about, a meeting or something more with another person. There was no other condition for discussion. I spent my time working and preparing for the upcoming move and had no time to socialize, but this was her meeting, and I would have to be patient until she told me what it was about. We met that evening at the club in the dining room. Ellen and I had eaten here many times, and she loved it. There were always many wives, and she knew several of them. This didn't happen today, so we were basically alone. We only ordered coffee and dessert. We talked for a while about trivial matters, then about the children. She had been talking to both of them since we left and told them that I had to work day and night on a presentation, one of those things I had convinced her was keeping me so busy, which was why I was staying at the club. She gave them the room number and phone number so they knew it was all true, a smart plan. I noticed we finished dessert and sat back while the waiter cleared the table. As soon as we were alone, I got down to business. "Okay, what happened that you needed to talk to me? Have you found yourself a boyfriend?" Ellen's face betrayed surprise and confusion. Before she could recover, she just stared at me for a few seconds before responding. No, I do not have a boyfriend, but I have a friend that I wanted to talk to you about. He's one of the instructors at the sports center, and he's new to the area. He is much younger than you and me, but he would like me to show him the area and maybe help him find cheaper housing. I agreed but told him that I had to talk to you first, so it's not a date. This is just friendly help to a new person. Is that okay with you? I thought about her words. First of all, she said that she had already agreed, so much for our rules. Well, since you already agreed, why are you telling me about this? This took her by surprise. I don't think she had thought about it. She just saw a cute guy and saw it as a way to see him without feeling guilty. I watched her face while she tried to justify herself. I didn't mean that I had already agreed. I just thought it would be normal, but I needed to clarify. That's what I'm doing now. Well, I think you've already told him it's okay, but let's leave it at that for now. Since you've already made it clear to him that we're separated, how do you think he'll take it? Does he know this isn't a date? Does he know that you are just friends? I saw the familiar anger appear on her face. This was another instance where Ellen had no control, and it pissed her off. Of course he sees it that way, there can be no other way for him. So do you agree? Can I help him, or will you say no? Of course, I will say yes, since you already told him that everything is fine. I can't tell you what to do or not do. I don't have to like it, even if I disagree, it won't change anything. You will still do what you want. We've been married 23 years, and have I ever told you that you can't do something? Have I ever acted like the boss and told you to do what I say? Of course not. You've never been like this, but now I'm confused. You said the rules require the other's consent before doing anything new. Are you saying this is wrong? Yes, I'm saying this is wrong. What I said is that we are separated, but we are still married. If one of us decides to do something that might be misunderstood or something we wouldn't have done when we were together, we just have to let the other know. This is what we agreed on. You said you want to see this guy socially, that's all you have to do. I have no right to agree or disagree. I don't own you, and I don't give you orders. You do what you think is right. But if you break our wedding vows, that's different. Just remember this. This is madness. We are married. Why can't you tell me not to do something? Don't you have the right to do this? I have. We've never done this in 23 years, so why start now? I have always lived by a simple rule. I don't do anything alone that I wouldn't do in your presence. I stopped and looked at her carefully. It was important that she heard what I had to say. It could make the difference between staying together or ending our marriage. I don't know what you're planning or thinking, but if you have plans to do something that you think I might object to, be very careful. Is this what you want to do? Is there more to this than just friendship? No, I think this conversation is over. I have a lot to think about. Let's talk later. Don't call me for a day or two. And I think we need to agree to extend this trip for another month. I told you, so it's done. As you said, your consent is not needed. Goodbye. With these words, Ellen ran out of the club, and I remained slightly intoxicated. I didn't like where this was going and definitely didn't like what I heard tonight. But this was what I expected. Ellen felt free and was testing her limits. Ellen didn't know how to keep boundaries, I knew it, and she was headed for trouble. I drank another drink and went up to my room. The advantage of living here was that I could always find my way home. Only a day later did I discover that I was missing an important file for one of my clients. I knew exactly where it was, so I called Ellen's house and told her I needed to go get it. Without giving her time to start an argument, I said it would only take me 5 minutes and we agreed on a time for the evening. I was supposed to be there at 7:30, and she would meet me. I arrived exactly on time and parked in the driveway next to another car that I didn't recognize. Apparently, she had guests, and I thought this was her way of preventing our next conflict. Okay, I assumed it was one of her friends from church, but no problem. I knocked on the door at exactly 7:30. Ellen let me in with a brief invitation, and I walked into the hallway of our home for the first time in weeks. Nothing had changed, but I don't know what I expected. What I definitely didn't expect was what happened next. Behind her, in the kitchen doorway, stood a young man. He was tall, well-built like most young men, and very handsome, light brown hair deliberately disheveled with a 2-day stubble. I guess it was that casual look that these young men thought was cool. He had a smile on his face that looked anything but pleasant. "Spencer, I'd like you to meet Walter Simpson. He's the new instructor I told you about." "Walter, this is my husband, Spencer Christian." I shook his hand more out of surprise than in an attempt to be polite. I just looked at him in his smiling face and started to see red. I think I controlled it very well by saying something polite to him before turning to Ellen. "Can I talk to you in the office for a minute while I get the file, please? This needs to be discussed." Without waiting for her answer, I quickly went to the office. I stood at the door waiting for her to follow me. I closed the door and turned towards her. I tried to calm down, breathing deeply. I felt my heart slow down, and the circulation in my face began to decrease. All this time, Ellen just stood there, looking at me with fear and surprise. I tried to speak with as much control as possible. "What is he doing in our house?" I remember very clearly that I said there should be no men in the house while we were apart. "Do you remember this?" "You didn't remember this agreement." "What is he doing here?" As I spoke, my control disappeared. I screamed, and I'm sure he heard every word, but I didn't care at that moment. I just wanted you to meet him. That's all. I just invited him so you could meet him and see that he's just a nice young man. That's all. Why are you so angry? How long has he been here? How long is he going to stay? You broke our agreement, and yes, I'm angry. I think you're giving me your answer about our marriage. You're ready to move on without me, and this is your way of telling me. I should have known when you asked if it was possible to start dating him socially. Well, apparently, I was a fool. No, it is not true. I just forgot that you can't invite men. I don't think of Walter that way. I'm sorry, it was just a mistake, and I'm sorry. I'll tell him to leave now, he will understand. Please, just wait until I tell him to leave, and we can talk. I walked over to the desk, pulled out a drawer, and took out the file I needed. I closed the drawer and walked past Ellen to the door. I'm leaving now. You do everything you planned. I'll call you tomorrow to discuss our next steps. Good night, and tell Walter my apologies. With these words, I left the office and went straight to the front door. I left before Walter even realized I was leaving. I never looked back. I got into the car and drove for the next half hour, not thinking about anything. I was just driving and thinking. I was truly hurt by her actions more than I could have expected. But the more I thought about it, the more I wondered why this was a surprise to me. I agreed to this. I was the one who thought she would understand what it was like to be without me by her side. I was the one who expected her to come back to me. Well, who was surprised? It was already well after midnight when I returned to my room at the club. Since I didn't have an answering machine on my phone, I didn't think about texting. I never carried my cell phone when I wasn't working on a project because I didn't want to be disturbed during my personal time. So, I had just entered the room when the phone rang. Without thinking, I picked up the phone. Hello? Spencer. God, where have you been? I've been trying to call you for the last hour. You left so suddenly that I didn't even have time to apologize for forgetting the rule. You know it wasn't intentional. I just didn't think. Spencer, please talk to me. Good night, Ellen. Please don't call me again tonight. I have a terrible headache and I need to sleep. You've done enough for me tonight, and I just want to sleep. Good night. With that, I hung up and unplugged the phone cord. Now I could sleep. I woke up the next morning feeling much calmer than I had for some time. I think I started to realize that my marriage was over, and maybe that was a good thing. We hadn't gotten along for a long time, and this move away was supposed to give us both time to think about our life together and our marriage. I wanted to continue our marriage and still loved Ellen with all my heart. I had no desire to be with anyone else and never thought about dating anyone else. But it looks like Ellen took this opportunity to see what was available to her. The good friend story was nonsense, and we both knew it. From her actions last night, it seemed like she was ready to take the next step. Well, it was her decision, and the consequences were obvious to me. I didn't go to work that morning because I had a meeting with a client downtown, and the club was closer. I got dressed and went to breakfast before heading out. While I was drinking my first cup of coffee, the concierge approached me with a note from Ellen. It said that she was waiting in the club lobby to talk to me and wanted me to come out to her. Since she was not a member of the club, she was not allowed to enter unaccompanied. I thought about the note and finally decided to go out to see her. She was sitting in the hall, waiting for me. She was neatly dressed for what I assumed was some kind of meeting. I walked over and stood in front of her. I said nothing. "Good morning, Spencer. I'm glad you agreed to talk to me. I tried to apologize last night, but you didn't give me a chance. I don't understand why you were so angry over a simple mistake on my part. It was just a mistake. You know Walter didn't stay when you left, and he was only there a few minutes before you arrived. Nothing happened, and nothing could happen. You must understand this." I still didn't answer. I was just waiting for her to continue explaining. As she started to get angry, I knew that if I provoked her, she would say something without thinking, and I could find out the truth. While I waited, she began to get nervous, her breathing quickened, and she was starting to worry. Nothing happened. It was a stupid mistake, and I didn't even think about it. He was just there to meet you. That's all. Why are you acting like this? Because, Ellen, you don't make stupid mistakes. You're too smart for that. I think you invited him so I could see him, so you could rub my nose in it. I think you're getting ready to make a move that you know I won't like, and this is your way of doing it. Make me angry and then blame me for everything you do. This is what you've been doing for a year now, blaming me. Well, do what you want, but do it because you want to, and not because I forced you." Ellen was furious. She stood up and looked at me, and I knew the explosion was coming. I was calm and in control, but she didn't know that and was completely beside herself. "Okay then, I'll follow the rules. I'm telling you now that Walter asked me to dinner and a dance, and I'm going to say yes. I want to tell you that I don't know where this will lead, but you said that we should do what we want. This is what you said we should do, whatever we want. So, don't be surprised if something happens that you don't like. Fine, you told me. When is this supposed to happen, or has it already happened since you had him alone last night? I no longer expect honesty from you. You already broke the agreement, so I think you'll do it again when it's convenient for you. Why do you care when I'm going to meet him? I have to leave for Atlanta by the end of this week, and I just wanted to know when he was coming again. Just in case, I wouldn't want to catch you together. It's Friday night, and you can get lost. He'll pick me up at 7:30, so now you know. Have you already agreed then? This visit was not to tell me what you want to do, it was just to let me know that you are here again violating our rules, and to hell with our marriage." "Oh, thanks. I warned you of the consequences, but you don't seem to care anymore. Now I know, and I will make preparations. Looks like our marriage is over." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her muttering and screaming that she didn't agree. But I walked through the door into the dining room, my heart broken. I couldn't let her see it. She had no way of knowing how badly she had hurt me. I reached the dining room, tears clouding my vision. I paused to regain control and finally returned to my desk. I sat down, lost and confused. I knew at that moment that my marriage was dead, and the woman I loved had already made it a reality. The concierge approached me again to tell me that Ellen would not leave until I returned to speak with her. I angrily told him to call the police if she didn't leave, but to leave me alone. I refused to talk to her in this state. It might have been a mistake, but I didn't care. I got up from the table, no longer feeling hungry, and returned to my room. Once there, I sat quietly until I calmed down, then went to wash my face. I had a lot of things to do, and I wanted to finish them before leaving for Atlanta. I put off going until I was sure of what I wanted to do. Ellen made this decision for me. Since it was already Thursday morning, I had at most 2 days to take care of some necessary things. First, I went to meet the man I called last night while I was driving around town. He was my old friend and could help me now. His name was Flynn Connor, and he was a lawyer. We had known each other for many years, and I often used his services for business transactions. When I told him what I needed, he was concerned but promised to have everything ready by Friday morning. I thanked him and went to make preparations for my trip to Atlanta. On Friday evening, I had already settled everything with John Wilson. I called Atlanta, told them my plans, and let them arrange my accommodations. I also negotiated for a car until I could either sell mine or move it. It was a Mercedes, which I loved very much, but it could be replaced. After that, I opened several new accounts in my name and transferred some of our funds to these accounts, removing my name from our joint accounts. I was careful to transfer less than 50% so I wouldn't be accused of trying to rip off our resources. Finally, I canceled all credit cards except corporate ones, since I was the main holder of most of them. Ellen was in for a big shock when her cards were canceled. I knew she had one in her name, so she wouldn't be left without funds. That night, I switched off my phone again and left my mobile switched off. I called the office and left a message for them to call the club if there were any messages, and I would call back. I explained that I was receiving some false calls, so I wasn't answering the phone. Several weeks ago, I had left an order on the plant switchboard that I would not accept calls from my wife, and I made it clear to my secretary that we were separating. She didn't ask questions and followed my orders. At 8 o'clock in the evening, I remembered that I had to call Ellen to remind her that I was leaving for Atlanta that evening and needed to pick up some files. I decided to end it and called, but no one answered. I didn't leave a message, but as I thought about it, I wondered where she might be. I didn't know of any appointments she had on Wednesdays, so I decided to drive over to the house and see if she was home. I drove past the house and saw that all the windows were dark, so I parked a little further down the street and decided to wait a while to see if she would come back. If so, I could pick up the files immediately and not come back. Only about 10 minutes had passed when I saw a car drive up to the house and stop. Ellen got out of the passenger side, and the man behind the wheel joined her. Together, they walked to the front door, which Ellen opened, and they both entered. This surprised me. I never would have thought Ellen could do this. I thought about going in and taking them by surprise, but I stopped myself. Instead, I just waited, and after 5 minutes, I decided to call Ellen under the pretext that I needed to go get something. "Hello, this is Ellen," she answered. I heard her say something to someone else, but since she covered the receiver, I couldn't make out the words. "Hi Ellen, it's me. Looks like you're not alone." "Of course I'm alone. What do you want at a time like this? Are you sure you're alone? Are you telling me that you don't have a man sitting in our house now?" There was silence on the other end for a second or two before she answered. "Well, Walter's here, but he's just..." I hung up without waiting for her answer. I turned off my mobile and drove back to the club. I had everything I needed. That night, I switched off my phone again and left my mobile switched off. I didn't want a conversation with Ellen where she would lie and I would pretend to believe her. My heart was too broken to let her do this to me. She had already betrayed my trust, and I didn't want more. Thursday was a free day, so I simply packed my things and sent them onward to Atlanta. To the factory, I would arrive before them, but I had a travel bag with clothes for the week. I could arrange for the purchase of everything needed until everything was moved. I needed to stop at home one more time to arrange packing and delivery of most of my belongings. I called the local carrier and asked him to meet me tomorrow afternoon at a time when I knew Ellen would not be home, one of her meetings. After that, I spent the rest of the evening in a small sports bar nearby. It was loud and friendly, and exactly what I needed. I returned to the room relaxed and too tired to think. I slept soundly. Friday was my last day here in Cleveland, and I couldn't wait for it to end. I was ready to leave and put this sad time behind me. I sent my luggage to the airport and the rest for delivery to Atlanta. I paid the bill at the club and thanked them for their politeness and patience. They were polite, but I knew they were glad to see me leave. I collected the documents from Flynn before lunch, and he and I had a glass of wine and a hamburger and fries. I promised to keep in touch and sign the documents he needed to act on my behalf. He put them in his pocket and promised not to use them unless I insisted. I stayed with him until it was time to meet the carrier at my house. The carrier and I made quick work of the task, marking my items with red tape. Since I didn't take any furniture and only a few things from my desk, packing and moving didn't take long. He would also pick up my car from the club for transportation. He promised to finish the work next Monday, so I would receive everything in about 5 days. I thanked him and left the key. Now all I had to do was kill some time until I called Ellen a little before 7. I wanted to be there before her boyfriend arrived. She had to get ready, and I wanted to talk to her when she was distracted and worried. I was almost sure about divorcing Ellen, but I still wanted to give it one last chance. It would make my job easier. I went back to the sports bar and waited until it was time. I had a couple of beers, but not enough to cloud my mind. I finished with a quick dinner and coffee. It was almost 6:30, and it would take me almost 20 minutes to get home. I decided to leave and hit the road at 6:50. I pulled over to the side of the road a block away, turned on my mobile phone, and called home. Ellen, it's me. I need to pick up some files from the office, and I'll be there in 10 minutes. Please leave the door open. If you need to leave, Spencer, where are you? Why did you hang up last night? You never give me a chance to explain myself. God, you make me feel guilty even when I didn't do anything. And why should you come now? You know I'm getting ready for an evening with Walter. Her voice was smug, but I expected it. In fact, it made what I was about to do even easier. I answered in the same calm voice. I told you I was leaving for Atlanta tonight, and I needed these files. It will only take me 5 minutes, and I will leave before your boyfriend arrives if he hasn't come yet. He's not my boyfriend and he's not here. Well, be quick because it will be very awkward if you both end up here. Don't worry, I'll be long gone, and you won't have to worry about me anymore. I hung up quickly and drove home, arriving there in 5 minutes. I took my briefcase from the seat next to me and entered through the side door. It wasn't locked, and I didn't see Ellen. I heard running water upstairs and assumed she was in the bathroom getting ready for her lover. I entered the office to grab the files I left earlier. When I was there, I gathered them together and took them out to the kitchen table, where I left them. I waited for Ellen to come downstairs and then pretended to put them in my briefcase. When Ellen came into the room, she said, "Well, you must have been outside when you called. You got here really quickly. Have you taken everything?" I looked at her as she stood and watched me. The look on her face was a mixture of anger and smugness. She was in a robe with her hair and makeup already done. She was still beautiful, and I felt my heart skip a beat in my chest. God, how I loved this woman, but I didn't know if she realized how much she had hurt me. You look very good tonight. I see that you are wearing the pearls which I always liked. I couldn't stop the tears from blurring my eyes, and I ran my hand over my face in irritation. I didn't want her to see me like this. Well, I see that you have made your decision. This is the set that Mary and I bought you for our anniversary, isn't it? You said they were too provocative and cute to be worn by anyone other than me. Actually, you never wore them for me, did you? But now you put them on for him. Ellen saw the tears, and it shocked her. For the first time, she seemed to be trying to convince herself that it wasn't what she was doing that was causing them. She attacked as usual. You are crazy. I just put them on because I wanted something pretty. This is not for him. You're trying to make me look bad. Seeing her like this, I wanted nothing more than to hurt her the way she had hurt me. I would never have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. She was obviously planning to have a night with Walter tonight. There was no longer any doubt, even through the pain that now threatened to consume me. I had to do what I came to do. I'm sorry, but I don't know who you are anymore, Ellen. But now I have something to tell you, and I will do it quickly. I don't want to be here when your lover arrives. First, John offered me a job in Atlanta, and I accepted it. This is the position of Managing Director of Southern Region Operations. I will report only to John, and I start on Monday. I'm leaving tonight and won't be back. I stopped to give her time to process this first piece of news. Spence, this is wonderful. What do you mean you won't come back? I continued talking without giving her time to answer or think. This happened more than a month ago, but I didn't tell you because that day you made a fuss about not having a bonus. You attacked me and didn't give me time to explain myself. You insulted and humiliated me. Then you asked for this trip, and since then, You have never asked why I spent so much time here at the main office. It became clear to me that you don't care anymore. It is not true. Of course, I care. I just don't. No, you don't care, and you haven't cared in a long time. You only care about yourself and your needs. I'll be damned if I don't bring in more money. All you could do was complain about everything I did or said. The last year with you has been a complete complaining session, and I'm fed up with it. I was angry and getting angrier as I realized her intentions. When we agreed to go out on a trial basis, I told you that we were still married and that we needed rules. You agreed, but then broke those rules several times by inviting your boyfriend home and making plans without telling me. I also told you that we need to think about our marriage and what we want after we separate. I knew early on what I wanted, but you decided that you wanted to date again, and your actions made it clear that you decided so. I made it easy for you. I finally made up my mind, angrily pulled the folder out of my briefcase, and threw it in front of Ellen. It slid across the table and fell in front of her. She looked at it, then at me. What is this, and what do you mean when you say I have decided? I haven't decided anything, and neither have you. We didn't even talk about it. And I told you I made a mistake. I didn't break the rules on purpose, you know it. We need to talk about everything. It's different now that you have a new job. I interrupted her again. She didn't see what she was doing and what it was doing to me, but I did. You decided that you wanted to see Walter socially, and you told me that you were going on a date with him tonight and would see what happens next. I see the way you're dressed, and that tells me exactly what you were planning. Your intentions are very clear. You're dressed for an intimate. But perhaps you already slept with him here in the house when he was here before. Ellen's reaction was immediate and intense. She turned pale, her legs gave way, and she sat heavily on the kitchen chair behind her. But not a second had passed before old Ellen appeared, and her anger got the better of her. I watched as her face scrunched up in rage as she prepared to attack me again, as she had been doing for the past year. But now I was furious, and I attacked first. Your actions and your words tell me that you want to explore other men and other options. Well, I don't want and won't accept this kind of behavior from you. We are married, and married women don't date other men, and they don't sleep with other men. I will never agree to that. I told you that unless we want to legally separate, our marriage is still valid. I repeated it over and over again, but you didn't listen. I warned you several times about the consequences, and you still didn't listen. So, I prepared them and signed them. These are divorce papers. I won't let you do this to me while we're still married, so it ends now. Flynn Connor has my power of attorney and will act on my behalf. You'll have to find your own lawyer to protect your interests. But I was as fair as I could be. Now you can sleep with your boyfriend without feeling guilty. Ellen looked at me with wide eyes, her mouth working, but she could not say a word. She was completely caught off guard, which was exactly what I was hoping for. Surprise was my only weapon when dealing with Ellen. When she was caught off guard, she would lose control for a while. It would take her several attempts to speak intelligently, and I took this opportunity to close my briefcase and leave through the side door. I immediately went to the car, started it, and drove off before she could get to the door. I pulled into the street as she came out of the garage, screaming after me. I drove back to the club and parked the car there for the carrier to pick up. I called a taxi to take me to the airport, and within 90 minutes, I was in the air. I was heading to a new job without my wife and with my personal life in disarray. I knew I had to stay and deal with Ellen. We could have made things a lot easier if we had just gone together, signed all the documents, and made all the preparations, but my anger wouldn't let me think about it. So, I trusted Flynn Connor to do the dirty work. He was good, fair, and would do the right thing. I trusted him much more than my wife. I landed in Atlanta and headed to the car rental place. As soon as I received the car, my luggage was ready, and I headed to my new apartment. It was one of those furnished places that people like me used when they didn't know how long they would be staying. My plan was to start looking for housing as soon as I had time. Maybe I'd drive around the area this weekend to see what's available. I actually needed a realtor, but I thought it was too early. This place should be fine for a while, as it was close to the factory, and I was ready to start my new life on Monday morning. Everything was starting to look better. No one knew my location except John Wilson and Mark Todd. Both could find me, but no one else. I wanted it to be that way. I wanted to be alone to think and plan my new future. I needed to call Mary and Martin and let them know how to find me and maybe prepare them for what was going on between their mother and me. I hated doing it, but they had to know. The next morning, my first morning in Atlanta, I called Mary. She was always ready to defend me in any situation, and I wanted to tell her personally what was happening. I trusted her to keep what I told her a secret. I called hoping she would be there and was delighted when she answered. "Hi honey, it's Dad. I'm calling from Atlanta and I want to give you my phone number here and tell you what's going on. But first, how are you and why is a beautiful girl like you at home on a Friday night? Dad, what's going on between you and Mom? She called here about an hour ago asking if I knew where you were. She sounded very worried. What did you do? She knows I'm in Atlanta. She doesn't have my number because I didn't give it to her. I don't want her to know. If I give it to you, will you promise not to share it with her? You will do this? Dad, stop it. It's Mom. She has been your wife for 23 years. Why can't she talk to you? What's happening? Did you and Mom do something stupid to each other? Mary, this is between your mother and me. I don't want to go into details. Just know that this is how I want it to be. We actually separated, and it was a mutual agreement. It's not legally enforceable, but it's still real. Mary wanted to know the details, but I didn't go into them. Finally, she gave in and promised not to share the number with Ellen. I gave her the number and asked her to call Martin and tell him the same thing. She agreed but said she wanted to know more as soon as I could tell her. We talked some more, and I hung up feeling like I had been hit by a truck. I was exhausted and lonely and was just beginning to understand what that meant. I didn't like it and wasn't looking forward to the sequel. The weekend passed without further stress. I stocked up on groceries, beer, and soft drinks, and was ready. On Monday morning, I left early for the plant to meet with Mark Todd. We knew each other and worked together on several big projects, but it had been a long time since I had seen him. We spent a good morning just discussing business and talking about the situation in Atlanta. We visited several sites, and I met with most of the general contractors and site managers, feeling like it was a productive day. We spent the rest of the day setting up my office and getting my files ready. Mark assigned me a secretary and an assistant until I found my own people. I met with them and was satisfied. It seemed that this part of my life was under reliable control. Mark invited me to dinner, and I spent a pleasant evening at his home with his lovely wife, Alice. They had been married for over 35 years and seemed perfect for each other. I watched them, and it was difficult for me. I couldn't help but think back to my life with Ellen. 2 years ago, we were the same, but over the last year, Ellen had changed, and I didn't know why. But whatever the reason, we had lost what we had all these years. I pulled myself together and apologized for leaving early, returning to my apartment before I lost my cool. When I returned to my apartment, I was surprised to see the message light on my phone flashing. It turned out that there was a voicemail system I didn't even know about. I picked up the phone, and the system asked for a password. I didn't know it, so I just hung up and looked for anything that could be a password or key. I finally found the instructions in the drawer under the phone, and it said the password was the last 4 digits of my phone number. I tried it, and it worked. Spencer, this is John Wilson. I hope you've settled in and found your way. I called earlier, but you didn't answer. I think you were with Mark on site, so you decided to wait until the evening. This is not a business issue but a personal one. What's going on between you and Ellen? She came to see me today and was very worried that she had no way of contacting you. She only knew you were in Atlanta but didn't seem to know much else. I don't know what's going on, Spencer, but I asked you to talk to her and figure it out. I like you both, and I don't want anything to happen to your marriage, not at this time when you are starting a very important stage in your life and my business. You'll need a woman like Ellen by your side when you start hosting some of the important and powerful people in Atlanta. This is a very important part of your new job. I told her the same thing, so please, Spencer, take care of your family life before it negatively affects your professional life. I hope I've made myself clear. By the way, I will help as much as I can. Good luck. So Ellen reached out to John to find out where I was and how to contact me. More likely, she turned to his wife, Stacy, whom she knew from church committees. She once mentioned that she met her and didn't think much of her. Well, she must have been desperate to reach her regardless. This made me angry because she had no right to approach my boss, especially at this time in my career. If she's not careful, she could screw up her child support payments. If I get fired, she'll be left with nothing. I sat there for a while, trying to decide what to do. I had to contact Ellen to get her to back off. I could call Flynn Connor, but it would take time to find a way to get her to leave me alone. There was nothing left to do but call her. I grabbed a beer, laid out some snacks to soak up the alcohol, and drank a couple more for courage. I was slightly drunk but still conscious when I called. Hello? Who is this? It's me, the man whose boss you called to try to get me into trouble. Why did you do this? Are you trying to get me fired on my first day on the job? Don't you realize you're playing with future alimony payments? Spencer, please. I was going crazy not knowing where you were. You left without giving us a chance to talk. You didn't let me explain. Shut your mouth about explanations. I knew exactly what you were going to do, and so did you. There was nothing to explain. You were going to sleep with him, and we both know it. So why are you calling my boss? Spencer, you got it all wrong. I was just trying to make you jealous. I am not going, Ellen. I'll hang up. You can't stop lying or you're just lying to yourself. This marriage has been in trouble for a long time, and now we both know why. You wanted more than I gave, and you found a way to get it. Well, I don't want to be a part of this, and I don't want to be with you. Leave me alone, got it? No, Spencer, I will leave you alone. I don't care what you think, and I won't go away without a fight. I've already said it, and I'll say it again, you misunderstood me. Goodbye, Ellen. Do not call me again. With these words, I hung up. She didn't know where I lived and only had my phone number, so I pulled the phone cord out of the wall. This should have given me a break for a while. I needed to get things done here and needed time alone to do that. I'd call Flynn tomorrow and ask him to start the process and maybe speed it up, and perhaps consider a restraining order against Ellen. It was worth thinking about. So, the first thing the next day, I called Flynn and told him to get things started. I wanted to get out of this as soon as possible. He said he filed the papers on Monday as we agreed, but the process would take at least 180 days, even for a divorce by mutual consent. If Ellen didn't cooperate, it could take longer, but he was handling it. I mentioned the restraining order, but he just laughed and said to forget about it. I managed to get a lot done over the next 3 days. I met with all the construction engineers, most of the subcontractors, spent time with the planners and architects, and we established and reviewed several project schedules. I was in my element, and everything was going well. I only turned on my phone in the evening to check messages and simply deleted the ones from Ellen. Time passed, and things got better. I was usually so tired in the evening that I fell asleep without problems and without dreams, feeling that my life was back on the right track. Tomorrow was Friday, and I was meeting with a realtor in the evening after work. It was time to start looking for permanent housing. I had no plans, but it would be more of an advantage than anything else. It was after 7:30 p.m. when the realtor finally left. He showed me a few properties he thought I would like, and we agreed to view a couple of them tomorrow. There was one that I really liked. It was quite modern and located on a small hill overlooking a picturesque valley. It was within my price range and seemed perfect. It had a pool and a separate building in the backyard for a workshop or hobby, and the owners were ready to sell quickly. Maybe I'll get lucky and find a place early. Since this is just for me, I might decide on the spot. With that thought in mind, I took off my shoes and relaxed for the first time in a stressful week. Everything might be okay after all. I hadn't felt pain for almost 3 days, only occasionally when least expected. I could live with that. The messages from Ellen finally stopped, but I still didn't sleep well that night. I think things had calmed down, and now that I'd had time to think and comprehend my future, it didn't seem as rosy as it did yesterday. I was lonely, there was no other way to express it. After 23 years of living with another person, I was alone. The person I planned to spend the rest of my life with was gone, and she left, tearing my heart with her actions. I couldn't understand why she hated me so much. I still didn't understand. My dreams kept me awake most of the night, and I finally fell asleep only when the sun began to rise. I gave up just after dawn and got up to make coffee and toast. My stomach was a big puddle of acid, and I had a headache the size of Texas. I ate toast, drank coffee, and got in the shower for an hour. It was only toward midday that I began to feel the first signs of normalcy. Finally, I put on shorts and a t-shirt and went for a run in a nearby park. I needed to get rid of this tension and apathy. I needed to forget. I ran 5 miles to punish myself, cooled off with a cold drink from a vendor, and walked slowly home. I stopped to admire the scenery and lay out of the park and spent some time just watching people. I was exhausted but felt much better. It is true that exercise frees the mind. My apartment was on the 2nd floor, and I walked up the stairs to the 2nd level. I had only 2 complexes. The gallery had several stairs leading up and down, and I took the one closest to my apartment. I used the key and opened the door. It was only after I pushed the door that I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned around and saw her standing there. If it was Ellen. Without saying a word, she walked past me and entered my apartment through the open door. I just stood there like a fool, trying to figure out how she could be here in my apartment. Nothing made sense. She didn't know where I lived, only 2 people knew this. Did she really go to John again after I asked her not to? She must have done it. Damn it. I walked in and closed the door noisily behind me. Why are you here, and how did you find me? Did you go to John again after I asked you not to? Damn it, Ellen, are you so determined to hurt me? Is this just another way to do it? What else do you want? You took my heart and threw it away like trash. You broke our marriage vows, and now you're trying to ruin my professional life. What have I ever done to you to make you hate me so much? Ellen just sat there, looking at me with tears running down her face. She hadn't said a word since arriving. She listened quietly as I yelled at her but didn't say anything. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't have the slightest idea. I just sat down and held my head, feeling the headache return with renewed vigor. I decided that there was no point in continuing in the same spirit and decided to change tactics. I decided to calm down and treat it like any other problem at work. First, I would gather as much information as possible. Fine, Ellen, why are you here? She looked at me and finally decided to answer the question. Because this is where I'm supposed to be. I am your wife, and my place is next to you. It was hypocrisy, it was more than I could bear. I lost my newfound calm and started laughing. I thought this was the most absurd statement I had ever heard. I laughed until tears streamed down my face. I actually felt a little better after that. That's really funny, considering what you're saying. A wife has no right to go on dates with other men. She has no right to invite men to our house when I'm not there. She has no right to sleep with other men. This is not a wife, this is a woman of easy virtue. I thought this would make her explode and show her rage like she had been doing for the past year. I was waiting for an explosion, and then we could get down to the nasty business of divorce. Instead, she simply nodded her head up and down. I deserve it. I made very serious mistakes, and I don't know why. This is what I have to find out, and I intend to do so. I'll find a good psychiatrist as soon as we find a place to live. Are you crazy or just stupid? Do you really think I'll stay married to you after you've been with another man? After you betrayed me? Maybe you think it's all over and that you can just move on with your life as if nothing happened. This happened, and I can't forgive it. We're done. Understand that. I waited for the explosion again, but it didn't come. What do I need to do to make her understand what she did and why I can't forgive her? I may be a little crazy for what I did, but I'm not stupid. I know you couldn't forgive me for sleeping with another man, and I didn't expect you to. You may not believe me, but it's true. When you left that night, leaving the divorce papers and making me see what I had planned, I finally hit rock bottom. I went upstairs to our bedroom and looked at myself in the mirror. You were right. What I saw in the mirror embarrassed me. I looked like that woman of easy virtue you called me. I was going to let Walter have an intimate with me that night. I was going to sleep with another man. The proof was in the mirror in front of me. I saw this, and it suddenly hit me right in the face. She passed her hand in front of her eyes and tried to wipe the tears from her face. She looked around for a towel or napkin, and without thinking, I got up and brought her a hand towel. She accepted it gratefully, and I returned to my place on the sofa. I was waiting. I realized that I had crossed a line I should never have crossed, and it scared me to death. My mind was a mess, and I couldn't think rationally. But somehow, I realized that if I let Walter into the house, he would take everything from me. I would lose everything if he came into the house. I ran downstairs and locked all the doors and turned off all the lights. I went back upstairs, turned off the light, and then sat in the dark, shaking. I heard the doorbell ring several times, but I didn't answer or make a sound. Perhaps 5 minutes or more passed. He continued to call. I just sat there quietly until Walter finally left. Still, I waited, afraid to go down. I didn't know what I was thinking at that moment. Actually, I don't think I was thinking. I just sat there in the dark and waited. Ellen seemed to calm down a little. I was more pleased than I thought to learn that she didn't go all the way. I must have fallen asleep on the bed because the next thing I remember is waking up the next morning with the sun streaming through the windows. I hadn't closed the curtains. I slept for more than 12 hours straight, but at least I knew I didn't do what I had planned to do last night. Your actions forced me to face myself and look at who I had become. I no longer recognized myself. I was ashamed of who I had become. You called me a word omitted, and you were right. I haven't been myself in over a year and have been drifting without direction this whole time. As a result, I made stupid decisions, and it almost cost me everything. Until now, I had to admit that I was surprised by her words. I didn't know she realized how much she had changed. Even though I was on the receiving end of her actions, I knew she was lost when the 2 kids left for college, but I didn't see the changes that were happening. Part of it was my focus on work at the expense of my home life, and part of it was my withdrawal when she started making more demands on me and my time. I just backed off and made her do things outside the house and away from me, but that was only part of the problem. I didn't know what else motivated her. When I asked to leave, I knew that you would still be there. You weren't home, but you were always just a phone call away. I still felt you in my life. There was no real threat to my life at that time, and I wanted to do something to make you feel the loss of our life as much as I did. I wanted you to understand what it means to live alone, separated from your children and spouse. That's how I felt. I think it's what they call separation anxiety. I was alone for the first time in over 20 years. Everyone had something to do except me. You were at work, the kids were at college, and I was home alone. I know that none of this was entirely real, it was a symbol of how I felt. I know it now. Now, she looked straight at me, her eyes wet and red, but her gaze was clear and calm. I waited for her to finish. When you left me, I suddenly realized what it meant to be truly alone, and it terrified me. Not the fact of loneliness itself, but the fact that I was left without you. Suddenly you were gone, and I didn't know how to find you. I really was left alone, and you disappeared from my life completely. No phone calls, no visits, nothing. I called everyone, even Mary and Martin, but they wouldn't tell me where you were or how to contact you. I called your office, and no one would tell me how to contact you. I tried everything, feeling more and more alone with each failure. I almost gave up, but then I decided to try one last time and called Stacy Wilson. Even though I didn't like her, I was desperate enough to try. She said that she would arrange a meeting for me with her husband. I talked to John, told him a little, and apparently it worked because you called the next day. But I still don't know how you found me. John told you where I am? No. When you called, the caller ID recorded your number in memory. After you hung up on me and were so mean to me, I was completely depressed and ready to accept that we were done until I remembered the call log. I wrote down the number and called Angie Peterson. Do you remember her? Her husband is a policeman, and I asked her to get his address using this number. It took me several hours of begging, persuading, and screaming, but she finally agreed to help and got him to do it. That's how I found you and why I'm here." She shrugged and lowered her head. "I had to come here and tell you everything. I needed to make sure that, even if you kick me out forever, you know that I didn't betray our marriage. I needed to make sure you knew that this was important to me." I have to admit, it was quite a story. She understood the lesson I wanted her to learn, but not in the way I expected. She had to hit rock bottom before she saw it. "Now that you found me, what has changed? What will make our life here better than it was?" "I still have to work, the kids are still gone, and nothing else has changed except the location. Why will it be different now? You were ready to cheat on me. You made my life hell without giving me any explanation or chance to change anything, and you were the one who wanted to move away to spend time apart from me. I don't see why it would be different now. I'm not going to quit my job. Perhaps I will work even harder and longer than before." She raised her head and looked at me with a serious expression. She seemed more confident now. "The difference is that I have changed, not something or someone else. I realized that I needed help and I had to find my way back. It won't be easy, and I have a lot of work ahead of me, but I want to try and make it work. I want to make my life better, but I want to do it with you, not without you. I have no life without you. I realized this when you left. I know now what I will lose if I don't change." She stood up and came towards me, taking my hands in hers. She looked into my eyes as she finished her story. "My future is in your hands. If you let me stay and help me, I can be the wife you want and need. I can be who I was before, and maybe even better now. But if you reject me, I don't know what I'll do. I just know I don't want to find out." I looked deep into her eyes, trying to find the truth. What I saw there convinced me it was worth a try. The realtor showed me several houses. "I think you'll like the one I chose. I'm sure it will work out." Closing her eyes and thanking God for another chance, Ellen realized that the decision to consider leaving her husband was hers and it was wrong. She knew it then, but she continued anyway. The path she walked was full of dangers, and she never thought about the consequences. Luckily, Spencer stopped her before it was too late. Consequences are a cruel thing. What do you think of our story today? I think the husband was very surprised to see a strange man after setting clear rules, which the wife in turn had broken at the time of their divorce. What's your impression? Write in the comments. See you in the comments.